Oh, this again? Are we doing this again? I didn't even see you guys there. I guess interrupting my time here. Alright. What's going on? What is this? Alright, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 2 recap 2021. Let's see. What happened in Week 2? Only one team goes over 200 points this week. We had 2 last week, only 1 this week. Scores have gone, in general, up a little bit more than they were last week. But in recent years, the first couple weeks of the season we've seen is when we tended to see pretty crazy scores. So, in general, things are actually down still a bit, I would say, for whatever reason. No, there hasn't been any big explosive performances. I guess Derrick Henry this week was probably one. But other than that, there hasn't been huge performances across the board. Dak he had his good week 1. As you may remember last year, he was going crazy, scoring like 75, 80 points a week till he broke his ankle. But yeah, just in general, things are kind of down. Usually we have more 200-point scorers. This week, only 1. We've only had only 3 so far this year. Usually we'll have 3 pretty much in any given week. So that'll be interesting to see going forward how much things change. Let's see. Anything else interesting happen? I don't really think nothing really stands out. But I guess maybe until we get into the actual matchups here, maybe that will jog my memory a little bit. Seeing as how, whether you know this or not, you probably already do, I don't plan these recaps at all in advance. So we kind of just fly by the seat of our pants here. And you get my reactions pretty much right out of the bat here. So, as always, we start with the defending champion. This year, it is the Springfield Isotopes. And this year, once again, the defending champions go down in defeat to Possum Magic, perhaps getting revenge from last year when the Isotopes defeated Possum Magic 3 times. So we'll get to play at least twice this year. And then last year, there was 2 times in the regular season and once in the playoffs. And I believe last year the Topes scored over 200 in all 3 of those matchups. So a little retribution here for Possum Magic. He gets the victory, 181.45 to 151.2. For Possum Magic, Russell Wilson he has a long touchdown, so he gets you 54.75. 3 receivers, McLaurin, Diggs, and Thielen. Is about as good of a trio as you're going to get in the league here this year. Things started pretty tough because Washington only threw to Terry McLaurin on Thursday night. 11 catches, a touchdown, over 100 yards, 27.5 points. Diggs gets a touchdown. He gets an even 16. Thielen gets just under 16. All your receivers scoring touchdowns. Chubb gets a touchdown, just under 100 yards. He gets you 16.8. Mixon gets you 8. Higbee gets you 2. Harris in the flex gets you 13.5. Your kicker, stuck up from Tampa Bay. No field goals, but he made 5 PATs. Actually, he made 6, but he missed 1 there. And then your Cleveland Browns defense. Yahoo says 10. Looks like we bumped you up pretty far there, so I'm going to guess the actual score. 15, 12. I'm going to guess 21 or 22 for the Cleveland Browns defense there. So not a great score, 181, but pretty good. It's going to get you a win more often than not, probably. That's kind of still. Ever since we adjusted the league to all the points counting, 181 is kind of on the cusp of being iffy. Used to be that would be almost guaranteed a win, but now not so much anymore. You need to get at least 175, 180 if you want to feel comfortable. But then again, once again, there's no score that will probably make you feel comfortable until the week is finally over, until it's Monday night, the fourth quarter, and you got things pretty much wrapped up here. For the Isotopes, Stafford 38, Devontae 20, Ridley 19, Deontay 19.5, Edmonds 12.5, Sanders 7, Everett 1.3. Put Everett in this week, thinking that hopefully, since he has Russell Wilson, hopefully Russell would throw some passes his way, maybe a touchdown, but not this week. Only one catch for Everett there for 3 yards. In the flex, T. Higgins, 16 points. Boswell goes for about 7.5. And then the Dolphins defense gets shut out. 35 points they gave up to Buffalo. Yahoo says 7, but I think that was correct. Maybe it was 10. Even though Buffalo destroyed Miami, the Miami defense actually scored me more points than I would have gotten if I had played the Seattle defense, which I very nearly did at home against Tennessee there, but would have made a difference either way. So let's take a look. Any last thoughts on this matchup? I don't think so. Said once again, had to have a Thursday night wide receiver, have a big game, and kind of sit there and wait for the rest of the weekend, knowing that things were looking not so good right out of the gate here. And once again, gonna have another Thursday night where I don't have anybody, but my opponent, which is Justin this week coming up, has McCaffrey against the Texans, who, as you probably know, lost Tyrod Taylor this week. Their whole team's a mess. They're going to be playing a quarterback pretty much off the street, and I'm already expecting McCaffrey to go for about 45 to 50 points on Thursday night. That game's not going to be competitive at all, I'm guessing. So yeah, something more good things coming my way down the pipe here. So anyway, Possum Magic with that victory. He actually stays in first place. He is 2-0, and the Isotopes, they stay in 12th place. They are 0-2. Next matchup was the highest score of the week, CMC Music Factory, going up against Saquon It Ain't So. And despite 50 points from Derrick Henry and Prescott in there this week, wasn't enough to get it done as CMC goes over 200. He gets 216.2. Saquon, 181.85. All right, let's take a look at what happened here. All right, perhaps Detling traded the wrong quarterback. We're starting to think that is definitely a possibility, as Kyler Murray goes for another 70 points this week. He had about almost 60 last week. He goes for even better, up to 70 this week. That's going to be tough to beat anytime. Said your Rams defense down there, they got you, looks like about 21. So pushing 190 points or so, 90 to 100 there from your quarterback and your defense. Just those two players alone, plus McCaffrey, is going to be enough, actually, probably to get you wins every now. And who cares what the rest of your team does? Between those three, the way this season is shaping up, that might be enough to get it done sometimes here for CMC Music Factory. Anyway, Mike Evans, who did nothing in week 1, he gets all the points this week. 2 touchdowns for him, 24.5. Julio goes for 18.8, bounce back week for him. Mooney, 12.6. McCaffrey, 25. Javonte Williams, is that a name? Yes, from the Broncos there. Let's see, 8.5. Tunyon gets a touchdown, 14.2. Tim Patrick, receiver from Denver, he picked up last week. Since Judy went down, only 3 catches, but he did get a touchdown. 12.7. Tim Patrick reminds me, they were talking about the waiver wire pickups last week, and I did put a bid in on Tim Patrick. Kind of surprised that it came up in the list of the transactions there in the bids, because he was like my third or fourth priority, waiver wire priority, and all of my drops were dropping. All of my possible waiver wire moves were involved dropping Tyrell Williams. So I got Johnson from the Saints there. He was my number one. I got him. So basically, my waiver claim for Patrick was voided because Tyrell Williams was no longer on my team. So unsure why it actually came up that I put a bid on him. Not that it matters, really. Just thought that was unusual, because basically it didn't matter. I wasn't going to get him anyway, just because he was he was like my third or fourth waiver claim there. Anyway, let's see. Special teams for CMC Music Factory this week. He's going all in on defense and special teams of the Rams. He's got Gay, their kicker. He goes for about 10 points. And once again, the Rams defense, Yahoo says 15. I'm going to guess the actual score was about 21. Enough to get past Saquon. It ain't so this week. Much as we know, he had Dak go for about 80 points last week. Would have gotten you a victory. Even though you had Aaron Rodgers on the bench and he scored more points this week, 20 more points, you still would have lost this matchup. But Jay, don't feel bad. You put Dak in there. Honestly, if I were you, Dak is your ride or die quarterback. You play him no matter what. Let's see. He had 32 points this week. I don't know that he had any touchdowns, but that was kind of a hard-fought game against the Chargers there. But again, Dak is one of those quarterbacks where set it and forget it. Don't worry. I know that maybe you see Aaron Rodgers doing a little bit better on your bench there. But once again, if I were you, which I am obviously not, I would be keeping Dak Prescott in there no matter what. So live and die with Dak Prescott. This week, once again, though, you died. Lockett, unexpected big start for him this year. He's gone off the first 2 weeks. He gets another. I think he didn't have a long touchdown. The other guy did. 20. I think he had a long touchdown last week, so that would have been 29 last week and 35 this week. Chenault, 2 catches for -3 yards somehow. So he actually gets you less points than he had receptions, 1.7. Corey Davis, 2 catches, 8 yards, 2.8. As already mentioned, Derrick Henry, unfortunately a wasted effort for you. From him this week, he goes for 50.5 points, 3 touchdowns, 180 rushing yards. Henderson, the other Rams player in this matchup, running back, he gets you 17.2, scores a touchdown, but looks like he might have a little bit of a questionable injury there. Tight end, Pitts, bounces back a little bit, gets you 12.3. Christian Kirk, quiet game after his big week 1, 9.5. Justin Tucker, about 8 points. And then your Colts defense, it was a matchup of defenses going against each other here. It was actually a much better game than I thought it was going to be. I thought, reason I dropped Rodrigo, I really thought the Rams were just going to kick the crap out of the Colts in this game, and there was going to be really no reason for the Colts to be kicking field goals because they were going to be so far behind in this matchup. But I just have little faith in Carson Wentz. But they actually held their own, and I don't know if it went to overtime, but this game ended up coming down to the wire there. And the Colts defense, they had a touchdown, they had a couple turnovers, did pretty good, even though they lost. Yahoo says 16. And I actually think because of the score, something was quite a little bit off because we took you down a little bit from Yahoo. So the Colts defense actual score must have been 14 and not 16. I think there were 2 teams this week where your defense actually scored you a little bit less than what Yahoo says, which is a fairly unusual situation. A lot of times it happens because of their scoring of point totals is a little bit off from what ours is. Plus, they do not do the +3 or -3 for whether your team wins or loses there. So, happens sometimes, but not too often. But it did happen twice this week. Anyway, yeah, tough break for Saquon. I think so this week. Sedino put Dak in there. He didn't quite perform. But said CMC 216.2. Is that the highest score in the league so far this year? I forget what Disco did last week. 215 last week. So yes, by 1 point or half a point or so, CMC Music Factory had the highest score in the league so far this year. Just not much you can do. It's just plain old bad luck there, Jay. Whenever your opponent pops off for about over 200, 215, 220 points there. It's going to be tough to get a victory, even though I think I just said Possum Magic had 181 as well. Both of you guys just off by 0.3. One of you gets a win, one of you gets a loss. That's just, as Gag's t-shirt says, it is what it is. Anyway, Saquon ain't so. He is 0-2. He is in 8th place. CMC Music Factory 2-0. They jump up to 2nd place. Disco versus Dub C. Disco in a matchup. Those guys admittedly said nobody deserved to win, but somebody has to, and Disco gets it by 20 points, 136.4 to 116.8. So Disco stays undefeated, and Dub C stays winless. Also, Dub C is eliminated from the knockout pool with the 116 points this week. Disco has Hertz go for 35.7 after, what did he have last week? Almost 60 last week, under 40 this week. Fortunately for you, it didn't matter. Speaking of 40, Tyreek Hill went for about that last week. Excuse me, this week, only 6 points. Godwin, 16. Mike Williams, another touchdown for him. Godwin had a touchdown. Williams had a touchdown. 22 points. You started both Colts running backs. Taylor gets you 6.3, and Hines gets you 3.2. So 9.5 points combined from those guys. Waller, only 11.5. Fournette in the flex, same thing, 11.5. Prater actually missed it initially doing his score because he kicked a 60-yard field goal, which Yahoo doesn't even go up to that. They only go to 50+. So I had to tack on the extra point there for his 62-yard field goal. Which kind of reminds me, I don't know if we've ever actually discussed this or not, but I assume so. If a kicker kicks a 65-yard field goal, that should be we do long touchdowns. Should a field goal of 65+ get +3? It's not a touchdown, it's a field goal, but still, 60. I'm not sure if that's ever even happened, a 65-yard field goal. But yeah, just something to kind of think about there in the future. Saints, their defense had a huge game last week. This week, they went along down with Jameis Winston went, and he was trashed this week. They got thrashed by Carolina. They did block a kick, had a turnover there. Yahoo says 11. We only bumped you up 1.5 points there, so I think that actual score of 11 must have been correct there. All the extra points going to Disco were from his kicker Prater. But it was enough to get past the Dub C Hooligans this week, who going into the Monday night game had Jared Goff left to play, and Disco was done. Let me check my notes here. Looks like Kevin needed about 65 points from Goff, which is not out of the realm of possibilities to somehow sneak out a victory in this one. Yeah, he would have been about just 65, 64 and a half, maybe 65. From Goff, unfortunately for Dub C, he could only get you 46. Gave it his best effort, just wasn't quite enough. Unfortunately, I'm looking at pretty much the rest of Dub C's lineup, and I'm seeing almost all single digits. So it wasn't so much Goff's fault this week, I think, as it was basically the entire rest of your team. Metcalf, he goes for 11.3. Robinson, 10.5. Amari Cooper, 5.5. David Montgomery, 11. And then the rest of the way, we got single digits. Gaskin, 8.5. Goddard, 4.5. Mitchell, 7.5. Koo, 5.5. And then the Washington football team defense, I believe they got you 7 was the correct score. Yeah, because we bumped you up, looks like about 3 points there. So yeah, unfortunately, Kevin said single digits from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players, and the other three of the others only scored double digits, just barely, 10s and 11s. That's not going to get it done. Pretty much every single week. I mean, although we've had teams score under 100, but it's rare, and those matchups are few and far between when 116 is going to get you a victory there. So probably hoping for better things in the future, as you made a trade here earlier this evening, which I will let those guys talk about in the preview their podcast, which they like to do. I'm sure they will find some sort of reason why your trade is stupid and pointless, and I know a victory for Gags probably, and a defeat for you was the way it usually tends to go. Anyway, with the victory, said Dusko, he remains 2-0. He is in 5th place. Dub C drops to 0-2, and they are down in 11th place. Once again, knocked out of the knockout pool there this week. Next up, we had Ed Lager going up against the Hillbillies on PCP. Hillbillies putting back the Steelers' defense, just like Dak. Those guys are a set it and forget it defense. They're not always going to blow you out of the water. This matchup, they surprisingly did not go too well. Although Bush was out, Hayden was out. I think that was before the game. And then TJ Watt went out during the game. Taking a look at you had Arizona's defense at home against Minnesota. Even though we said Steelers D probably set it and forget it defense, I haven't paid too much attention though. Did Bush play in week 1? Did Hayden play in week 1? I can't remember. But if they did, and then they were hurt and out in this game, if those guys were out in this game, it might have made Arizona's defense maybe a little bit of a better play, but I don't know. The Raiders' defense is probably more ideal matchup for your defense than the Minnesota offense there, so really can't blame you for playing the Steelers' defense there. Unfortunately, it did not work out. I personally also thought all week long that you were crazy for starting Lawrence over Burrow. Ended up being correct, I guess, but Burrow did not. I thought it was going to be a huge difference in points there. But Burrow actually didn't do too much better than Lawrence did. Anyway, let's talk about the guy who won this week, not the loser. Ed Lager, 181.75. Another 181 score. That's 3 of you guys. We also had 2 180.5s. So, you guys get a C for consistency this week. Ed Lager, 181.75. Hillbillies, 128.8. Lamar Jackson pops off this week. This is about his ceiling, really, I think, honestly. Um, he doesn't complete a lot of passes. He did have a lot of rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He got you 53 and a half points. Yeah, but outside, he doesn't complete a lot of passes. He only had 18. He's going to pick you up sometimes. Personally, he's not a quarterback I ever want. You'll never see him as the starting quarterback on my team. Just the way that they run their offense, I am not, probably never will be interested in him as a fantasy quarterback. But just my personal opinion. Your receivers, Keenan, Cooks, and Callaway, 14.5, 22.5, and 2.5 respectively. Running backs, Gibson and Hunt, 9.3, 6.3. Fant, another 0.3, 13.3. Swift, kind of a surprisingly low score from him. Thought he'd be catching a little more passes, doing a little bit more work there. Playing in catch-up mode, playing in that game, garbage time for him, for Detroit there. He got you 11.8. Kicker, Bass gets you 4. And then, surprisingly, the Bears defense had a big game, a touchdown, a couple of interceptions against the Bengals there. Probably the biggest influence in this matchup here. Looks like we bumped you up quite a bit there. Let's see, about 15 points. So, but your kicker didn't get any extra points. No long touchdowns. So yeah, we must have bumped you up 15. So the actual score for the Bears defense this week would have been 43. So let's see, almost 100 points between Jackson and the Bears defense. So even though Callaway 3, Gibson 9, Hunt 6, Kicker 4, a lot of single-digit scores there, it was enough to get you all the way up to 180 with a couple good contributions there in between, and enough to get past Hillbillies on PCP this week. Once again, he started Lawrence, who goes for an even 20 points. His receivers, Juju, Debo, and DJ. Juju gets a rushing touchdown, gets you 16.5. Samuel, Debo, 16. And then Chark, only 3 points. Kamara, only 7 points in that matchup against Carolina there, where the entire Saints offense pretty much was invisible. Carson, 2 touchdowns, not much other than that. He gets you 15.1. So 12 of his 15 points came from scoring touchdowns. Hawkinson, he gets a touchdown, 20.5 points from him. Najee gets a touchdown in the flex there, 19 points. Robbie Gould gets you about 6.5. And then the Steelers defense, I believe they got you exactly what Yahoo says, 5, because we didn't really adjust your score very much there. So, yeah, really not much that Hillbillies could have done this week. Taking a look at your bench there. Yeah, really nothing that you could have done any differently. You were going to get blown out no matter what happened with the team that you trotted out this week against Ed here. Nothing personal, just calling it as we see it. Ed Logger, he moves up to 1-1. He's in 7th place, while the Hillbillies on PCP drop to 0-2. They are in 10th place. Next up, Gags to Riches versus Biscuits and Porn. This one actually came down to Monday night. Taking a look at the notes here, Gags was done. He had 180.7. Jim had 144.3. So he was down about 36.5 or so, with Aaron Jones and the Packers kicker left to go. And Aaron Jones gets it all by himself. He said you needed 36. He got you over 40, and a couple PATs tossed in there from Crosby, since Jones basically scored nothing but touchdowns, no field goals for the Packers this week. And it was enough to get a Monday night comeback there for Biscuits and Porn, keeping him undefeated. He scores 190.8, set to Gags 180.9. 28.75. So that was what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you all scoring within about a 1.2, 1.6, 1.5 point range there. Yeah, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Almost, so 5 out of 12 teams this week, right in that same. Interesting how that played out. Maybe not to you guys, but interesting to me. Biscuits and Porn said gets the victory thanks to 41.5 points from Aaron Jones. Tom Brady got him 56.5. Lamb, 17.5. Antonio Brown said Tom Brady went for 56, but only got 2.5 from Antonio Brown there. 1 catch. You put, what is it, Devontae Smith? Yeah. Still learning these rookies' names here. The Eagles receiver, after a big week 1, he only had 3.5 points this week. Fortunately, it didn't cost you there. So Jones, 41.5. Zeke bounces back a little bit, gets a touchdown, 17.7. Cook, your tight end, 5.8. Claypool in the flex, 9.7. Crosby, all PATs, 5 points for him. And then the Patriots defense, really perhaps the biggest influence in this matchup, as Zach Wilson, the quarterback for the Jets, he threw 4 interceptions. They only scored 6 points. Yahoo says 25. The actual score must have been like 31 there, because everything was pretty close to accurate there. But yeah, Tom Brady gets you 57, 31. That's what, 60, 30, 78 points. 41 from Jones. Pretty much all your points coming from those 3 guys. Almost 100 there, 200 there. It was enough to get you past, though, past Gags, who actually had a very similar structure to his lineup here, as he was pretty much carried by 2 or 3 guys, while the rest of the team kind of failed to show up here this week. Taking a look at Gags, as we know, he's got Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey connection there. 53.5 for Kelsey, or Mahomes, sorry. And 24 of those points went to Kelsey. So that is what? 53 and 24, 77. Yeah. Unfortunately here, your receiving trio, A.J. Brown, Robbie Anderson, and Nelson Aguilar, all single-digit scores for these guys. 7.3, 6.8, 5.1. Single-digit scores for both of your running backs as well. 4.5 for Ronald Jones. David Johnson, 6.5. So Kelsey got 24. Gronk in the flex, he gets you 2 more touchdowns, goes for 20 points. But he is no longer on your team as of this recording. Butker, all PATs, just like Crosby. Both of your kickers in this matchup scored 5 points. And then the other big one was your defense. Both big matchup of quarterbacks, defenses, and like one other player. I believe the Bills defense, Yahoo says 30, but the actual score, I want to say, was 48. So a big score from them this week, shutting out the Dolphins. Didn't help help them that they knocked Tua out of the game, and the Dolphins didn't really do much at all the rest of the way in that game there. So yeah, said Biscuits, Brady, Jones, your defense. Gags, Mahomes, Kelsey, your defense. Those three guys, those 3 roster spots carried pretty much both of your teams. Even, which feels weird to say because you both said were in the upper 100s there, 180, 190. But yeah, so many single digit scores in this matchup. But said both of you putting up big scores here anyway. Gags basically just tough luck there in this one. Couldn't quite do it. Aaron Jones popping off for 4 touchdowns and 40 points. Biscuits, as I said, stays undefeated. He's 2-0. Gags Fortunately for you, you're not winless. You're 1-1, not at the bottom there with a whole bunch of other people. So you're right in the thick of it. You're in 6th place there. Finally, last matchup. The closest matchup we had came down to all sorts of different things that could have gone differently. Yinzer Jags pulls out the victory on Monday night over Shawshank Athletics, 180.55 to 177.8. So we'll get into a little bit here. Let's see. Yinzer Jags was down about 4 points, maybe 3.95, I want to say, with just Jamal Williams left to go on Monday night there, and he was able to get you 6.5 points and squeeze out a victory over Shawshank this week. For Allen, the guy you decided to keep instead of Kyler Murray, he got you, instead of 70 points, you got 35. Your receivers, Hopkins, Woods, and DJ Moore. Another touchdown for Hopkins this week. He gets you 15.5. Woods goes for 12. DJ gets you a touchdown, 22 points. Also 22 for Eckler, 22.5. So Jamal Williams, enough on Monday night to squeak out that victory for you. You needed 4, you got 6.5. Kittle, only 5.7. Kind of wondering what's going on there with him. Everybody talks about how great and wonderful he is, and top tier tight end here, and how lucky Detling is to have had him for all these years. But his potential was through the roof, but he just hasn't been performing. He was injured pretty much all last year, off to a sluggish start this year. So yeah, maybe having Kittle is not all it's cracked up to be anymore. But as Tree would say, we shall see. Courtland Sutton, beneficiary this week of Judy going out, maybe a little bit more than Patrick. He didn't score a touchdown. Fant scored a touchdown. Patrick scored a touchdown, but Sutton got all the yards and catches. He did all the hard work and got you 28 points in the flex there. Your kicker was from Miami, who we mentioned was held scoreless this week, so 0. At least he didn't get negative points from any missed kicks there. Oh man, well, it's when it said you still won by 3, 2.5 points there. Even if he had missed a kick or two, this matchup would still has stayed the same, but would have been much closer and more painful for Josh than it already is. And then finally, the Tampa Bay defense. Yahoo says 25. Looks like we bumped you up about 9, so 34 from Tampa Bay's defense. And as we already probably know, Tampa Bay's defense wasn't 34 points. So 9 and 18 of those points, more than half of those points, came from Matt Ryan throwing 2 pick sixes, not 1, but 2 pick sixes in the fourth quarter of that game. Said that's where more than half of Tampa Bay's defense points came from. And that was enough to bump this matchup in favor of Yinzer Jags to only needing. Said even if you take one of those pick sixes away, this matchup goes the other way in favor of Shawshank here. So a lot of little things that could have happened differently, but that's not what happened. For Shawshank, he has Herbert go for 50. Cooper Kupp, 40 points out of him. He's been on fire to start the season. Jefferson, 18.5. Let's see. Jamar Chase goes for 13.5. Dalvin, 20 points from him. Edwards-Helaire, 2.5 points. Thanks to a lost fumble on one of the very last plays of that game, the Chiefs-Ravens game. As you guys probably already know, the Chiefs were driving in field goal range, just about ready to kick a last-second field goal and win this game. But Edwards-Helaire coughed it up, lost a fumble. That's minus 2 points for Shawshank, who also happened to have the Kansas City Chiefs defense, turning a victory +3 into a loss -3. and in effect costing Josh at least, I guess there'll be about a 7 or 8 point swing there. Uh, and yeah, that's basically Edwards-Helaire coughing up that fumble and costing them the game-winning field goal. I mean, maybe Butker misses that kick. I don't know. Probably not. They were definitely in his range. So yeah, even if we tack on the fumble, that 2 more points back to your team, that only gets you to 179, and you would have lost by less than a point. But yeah, I could keep talking. It doesn't matter what I'm going to say. It's not going to make Josh feel any better. If anything, I'm unintentionally salting the wound here. Josh, I'm sorry. We won't talk about it anymore. Andrews, tight end. What a great play he was. 10.7 points. Good quality work, Josh. You're doing good. Keep your chin up. Landry in the flex. I see he's on IR now. Man, we are going ups and downs in this matchup here. Landry only gets you 2 points before going out with, I guess, an injury. Let's take a quick look here. They placed him on injured reserve with a knee injury, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Only 2 points from him. He plays the whole game. Probably turns this matchup the other way. But do you have anything on the bench that you would have done differently? I don't think so. So Landry had a good game in week 1. Note Beckham Jr. this week. Nothing wrong with playing Landry this week. Nope, can't fault you for that. Just bad luck that he got hurt before he could get you a few extra points there and get you enough for a win. Zerline goes for about 11 points or so, your kicker. And once again, the Chiefs' defense, they lost that matchup. You were the other team who actually had less points for your defense thanks to that loss. Then Yahoo says we actually had to cut 2 points off of your score. And you got 177 instead of 179. So yeah. Just plain old bad luck, Josh. Nothing you can do about it. Probably should have won this matchup. Injuries, and this just happened to be the way it went. You would have beaten a lot of other people in the league this week, but unfortunately, you went up against somebody who got just a little bit more than you. With a win, Yinzer Jags, he stays undefeated. He is 2-0, 4th place. Shawshank drops to 0-2. They are in 9th place. All right, that is it for week 2. Said Landry got hurt there and put on IR a little bit, we haven't had, knock on wood, any really huge, significant team-changing injuries this week or this year so far. Hopefully, that's a trend that continues. Nobody has really been gutted by injuries, which seems like somebody, at least 1 or 2 teams, happens to every year. So, again, not wishing it on anybody. Always love to see everybody going against each other every week with the best possible lineups. So that's been said. Scores have been down, but nobody's been getting hurt. So things are going pretty smooth so far for some people. Taking a look, so we got 5 teams 2-0. We got 5 teams 0-2, and we got Gags and Ed, buddies, right in the middle of the group there at 1-1. Take a quick peek here at what's going to go on in week 3, because it could be interesting. We got a lot of 2-0s. We got a lot of 0-2s. You start 0-3, you're in rough shape to start the season, considering you've got to get to at least 7 wins, maybe 8 to have a chance in the playoffs. As I said last week, this year, 7-7 is a possible record. Let's see. But you probably 8-6, maybe 6. I think Detling said a 6-8 team will make the playoffs. It's possible, unlikely to happen very often, that a 6-8 team makes its way. 7-7s, yeah, probably. There'll probably be there might be multiple 7-7s this year, maybe every year, that manage to take those last playoff spots. Um, just because the league is so usually, for the most part, in terms of standings, the league is usually pretty competitive most of the way through the year. But anyway, said who could start, if anybody might start 0-3, is going to be in a really tough position going forward. We've got the Isotopes going up against CMC, 2-0 versus 0-2, second place versus 12th place. If CMC could possibly knock the Topes to 0-3, they would be in a bad spot. Biscuits versus Disco going against each other, both undefeated. One of you is going to get the 3 wins and cruising along, well on your way, almost already halfway to 7. Possum Magic versus Dub C. There's another 2-0 versus 0-2. If Dub C drops to 0-3, he's going to be in tough spot there. Yinzers versus Ed, 2-0 versus 1-1. Gags and Shawshank, 0-2. Gags is 1-1 there. Josh will be looking to avoid dropping to 0-3. And then the last 2 0-2s actually are going against each other. So one of you is going to be guaranteed to go 0-3. And that matchup is Hillbillies versus Saquon It Ain't So. So I would guess that that's probably going to be the matchup of the week, because whoever loses that matchup is going to be said Hillbillies and Jay. Whoever one of you is definitely going to be 0-3 and in dire straits going forward here in terms of making a playoff push. 0-3. As I think Brian knows, well, he did it I'm pretty sure he did it last year, but he still climbed his way back into the playoffs. So yeah, you're down, but you're not out. I am forever the optimist here. So even if you're 0-3, you're not out of it. 0-6, you're not out of it. You still got a chance. 0-7, I'm going to say you're probably, you're technically, mathematically, you're not eliminated. But you got to win 7 in a row, which if you haven't won once, yeah. Anyway, it's all in the semantics of it. Just because it is possible doesn't mean it's going to happen. Well, I mean, never mind. All right, yeah, that's about it. Don't want to get much longer here. Should be some interesting matchups here. Already influential matchups because so many people. Usually we have a big log jam of like teams that are 2-0, 1-1, but all of these 0-3 teams, and just the way that the schedule shakes up this week, we could have a whole slew of teams at 0-3. Possibly 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4 teams could be 0-4 after this. 0-3. I'm sorry, after this week, and really, so that would mean that CMC would be 3-0. Said maybe Biscuits or Disco will be 3-0. Possum, that means he would be 3-0. And that would be, but so teams at the top would already have a 3-game lead on the teams near the bottom there. So yeah, got to feel pretty good right now if you're one of those teams at the top performing well, and starting to feel the heat if you're one of those teams near the bottom. So yeah, yeah, that's it. Said Dub C Hooligans knocked out of the pool this week, joining the Isotopes, and that is pretty much it. So yeah, week 2 in the books. I guess I have to keep doing this. I don't know. We'll see if you guys interrupt my book club time again next week. So that again, but thanks for watching, listening, or whatever it is you do, and good luck to everyone. No injuries, and hoping everyone performs at the I'm trying to think what the usual sign-off is. I hope everyone and their teams either meet or exceed expectations this week. That's what it is. And we'll see you back here to do this again next week. All right, guys. Thank you, and bye-bye.